Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel. So for those who don't know, I'm Alicia and I've been interviewing inspirational people to find out exactly how they've become who they are today. Now this week I interviewed Dr. Raj to find out why do people get cosmetics, why do they go for the Botox, the fillers. Here's how it went. Hi, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you, buddy. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Thank you very much for agreeing to do this.
No problems, no problems. Thank you for having me.
So you do quite a bit of work for models.
Yes.
Would you say that the model industry is changing at all in what is the perfect look?
So I think it's quite difficult because I think at one point there was a kind of, a mold that everyone had to conform to. But I think actually it's a bit more in vogue now to actually break the mold. And I think a few models have actually stepped outside that boundary. I'm not saying it's going to be the vast majority of people, but there has been a shift in recent years towards someone who actually looks different. And I think that's what they're yearning is because there's so much kind of sameness. And I think that's the problem is that with what I do, people expect that they want to look a certain way. So people will bring me like random pictures of Kylie Jenner's lips, or they'll bring me this, or they'll bring me that. And actually, it's quite naive to do that because I can't give you Kylie Jenner's lips. I can't give you, well, I can, but the problem is that they might not look good on your face. Everyone's facial structure is different, and we have to be completely bespoke with the way that we do it. And unfortunately, a lot of injectors, mainly non-medical injectors, have this kind of cookie cutter approach where you can buy packages of stuff. So you can literally go into somewhere, say I want the Kim K package, and literally walk out having paid a few £100s, and everyone, it doesn't matter what your face looks like, you're getting the same deal. And it's and that for me as a doctor is like, it's just sickening because it's everyone's face is completely different, everyone's needs are completely different. And I think in that kind of beauty industry, although there is conformed, and I appreciate kind of ideals, everyone's ideals are going to be different depending on what their face structure is like. So I think the beauty industry probably, and modeling industry, has probably come into its own a little bit more and has understood that. But I think kind of 10 years ago, there definitely was, a look that everybody wanted. But I think in modern day, I think it's transitioning now. And I think there has been a slow and steady transition towards, equality, diversification, and ultimately individualization of people. And people bring their own idiosyncratic elements to it. And I think that those nuances are what makes something interesting for a brand. And I think that's where I focus is that, I always ask people, do you want me to get rid of this thing, or do you want it because I think it looks really good on you? Some people will come and they'll have like a little bum chin or something, and I think it's like, it's really cute. I was like, don't get rid of your bum chin. Like, it's really nice. It's part of you. It's part of, the moment you get rid of it, people will know, oh, that person's looks different now. So I think those tiny little nuances, I think, are what makes us individual. And I think that's really powerful in being able to evoke, kind of our deep kind of artistic and spiritual side. But I think in the beauty and modeling industry, I think it definitely has, as I said, there's been some cogs that have been turning in recent years, and I think that's coming into its own. But I still think there's a lot to do.
Would you say what you like to do is kind of enhance the person's features, what are already there, as opposed to create something what's not there or get rid of something that...
So basically there are a few ways that we can work, and it completely depends normally on what the problem is that they're facing and their age group, basically. So we've got a few different types of patients. So we've got transformative patients. I'll explain what these are in a second. So transformative, we have positive aging, and then we have beautification. Those are the three main ones. There is a fourth one, but I always argue whether it's really a category. The first one is transformational. So there's someone who comes in with a really specific problem and they want to get it sorted, and it's short, sharp, once I've sorted it, it's gone. They had a problem, we've sorted it, and it's done. A typical example would be someone with a bump in their nose or something like that. Yeah, so someone's got a little bit of bump in their nose, so they've got a droopy tip. They don't like it, and they've had problems with it for a while. It's bothered them. I'm going to transform them. It's a transformative procedure. I can pop some filler above and below their nose. I can straighten up, lift up the nasal tip, and within 5-10 minutes, they've got a straight nose as if they were born with it. So that's transformational. Yeah. The other type, there's two types. There's positive aging, and so that's more about rejuvenation, and there's beautification. Beautification is probably easier to talk about first. It's basically making somebody more beautiful. This tends to be typically, not always, but tends to be typically younger patients who haven't really gone under the barrel of what we call aging, which starts about 25, and then it's all downhill from there, unfortunately, as I've really found out myself, personally speaking. So once we hit 25, the aging process starts, and we start to go down this normal, and I say normal because it is normal, it's a cascade of intrinsic and extrinsic factors that will mean that you will age in a certain way, depending on the way your genetics are programmed, depending on the amount of oil your skin produces, the amount of sun exposure you have, your diet, smoking, exercise, and 100 of the other things that we have no idea about because we just don't understand the genetic components. Aging process starts, and before that point, if somebody wants something done, because beautification is basically giving something to somebody to make them look more beautiful. Okay, so that means someone might need a bit more of a cheekbone because they didn't have one before, or they might want a bit of a sharper jawline. So it's basically giving someone a feature that they've never had before. They haven't had a problem with it, but I could make them more beautiful. And there is ideals of beauty in terms of male and female beauty, and depending on where we sit in terms of how far that person wants to go, what their budget is, what they're willing to change, what I think would look right and what I think wouldn't. And I'm quite blunt and honest in my consultations. It's a bit of a negotiation, really. It's kind of like, I understand that you want this, but actually, I'm telling you it's not physically possible, or it is possible, but it wouldn't look good on you. And it's trying to giving them previous case studies that I've done before and showing them my portfolio and saying, this is what I've done, this is what it'll look like. I don't think it'll look good on you. And I don't think, personally, I wouldn't treat that. So it's trying to make sure that they understand what will and what won't work. And that part of that is beautification, because part of that is basically giving somebody something they didn't have before and making them look more beautiful. Yeah. So there's some things that I can do to a female. For instance, in some females, we know that projection of the central cheek outwards in a female is a really beautiful feature to have. So if someone has a slightly flatter mid-face, giving them a tiny bit of filler there would make them look more beautiful in a normal instance. Sometimes it doesn't, and we have to take all that into account, and sometimes patients will come in actually for their nose, but actually they've got a little bump on the nose, but I say, don't touch the nose. Actually, the biggest thing that's going to help you is actually your chin, because normally people who've got a bit of a droopy nose have sometimes got a little smaller, lesser pronounced lower face, and their jawline, their mandible is slightly smaller. And actually, when we step back and we look at it with like kind of my artistic eye, we go, you're chasing the wrong thing. Even if you correct your nose, you'll still have problems with the way that you look because you haven't sorted it. And that's my job to tell them, because I'm like looking at it from afar. Once you've done enough, you kind of get an idea, and you kind of go, actually, you're sorting the wrong problem out. So sometimes lower face can be really helpful for those patients. So that's beautification, giving something they didn't have before to make them look more beautiful. When you hit a certain age, then it's more about rejuvenation. So actually, they already had it, but they've lost it. Okay. And it's giving something back to them. So, and sometimes we do a bit of rejuvenation and then we do beautification, but you have to do rejuvenation first. There are some certain points on the face that I know I can put filler into to beautify you, but unless I've rejuvenated you, they will look really weird and it won't look age appropriate. If one of my 55-year-old ladies come in and they want like a sharp Russian jawline, I will make them look 10 times worse if I did that to them, if I didn't correct their temple first, where they would have had hollowing, or underneath the cheek. If you don't fix the normal processes of aging, you have to solve those first. And in the modeling world, in most instances, it's younger females, so we don't have to do as much rejuvenation work. But you'd be surprised. I see, patients in their mid-20s who look like they have already entered that aging process a few years ago, and helping give them a bit of rejuvenation and then probably a bit of beautification on top, it can sometimes work wonders. It depends on what the patient needs. I've had some patients where I've solved all of their problems with half a mil of filler, and then I've got other patients where I've done, over multiple sessions, we've done 25 syringes of filler to solve their problem, and that's for like a 60-year-old female that I might have. So it just depends, and everyone's completely unique, and that's why it makes my job very interesting, because I have to put my thinking hat on and work with them to understand it. It's like an art. I consider myself an artist in that way. It's kind of making a sculpture. You don't know how much clay you're going to need. You don't know how much, a painter doesn't know how much paint he's going to need to make a painting. We kind of work as it goes along, and we bring it through, and we bring the beauty out of the marble. Does that make sense? And that's the way that's where I see it. So definitely, yes, there is beautification aspects, but not always. Sometimes it's transformative if they've got a problem with something, or sometimes it's rejuvenation, and sometimes even that can be the case in younger patients as well.
Okay, that's really interesting actually, because think of it all in kind of one bracket and that's it. You don't realise how much
No.
there is to it. So no, that's really
absolutely.
In terms of recommendations, what would you recommend? Say a 50-year-old woman comes to you, what would you recommend treatment-wise?
So I get that question quite a lot. Women just sit on my couch and go like this. What will you do? What are you going to do? And I think we've got to be really careful. We've got to tread really carefully, because I can give people, ideas that they'd never had. Yeah. So I can, and if someone was, negatively inclined, or kind of, less ethically able, they would potentially lead someone down the wrong path. I could say, oh, you need this, 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 and this, and this, and this, and this. And I give you a shopping list. And suddenly you walk out of my consultation room with very low self-esteem, feeling really rubbish about yourself, thinking you look awful. And that can be really, really hard. So I really, really hate that question when someone says, what can you do? I always turn it back on them and say, what are you having problems with? Because then we can start on something. We can focus on what they're having problems with, because they wouldn't be sat there unless they had a problem. If they didn't have a problem, which I'm sure even, the most beautiful people in the world have problems with how they look, or what, everyone's got problems with the way they look. If they didn't have problems, they wouldn't be sat there. So I always turn it back on them, and I don't like answering that question. But sometimes I get really, really annoying patients who who don't give in, and they just want me to do a full analysis. And in that case, I do a full analysis, but I always tell them at the beginning, I'm like, please don't be offended by anything I say. I'm just talking in general terms about what I think may be beneficial, but we have to take everything into account. And it doesn't mean you need everything done in one go. But in an ideal world, if you want me to go through it, I will. But please understand that, this is a process, and it's not me just giving you a shopping list. And normally people do understand once I badger on about it a little bit. And I think I think the best thing you can do for someone is to even before I look at their face, we just talk to them. Yeah. And I think that's so important, and it's underrated. And that's the problem, is my clinic is not a 5-minute Botox clinic. I don't do that. Those kind of in and out jobs, or people waiting in the waiting areas with numbing cream on. Like, I think it's appalling. I think for, people come to me to have a sense of appreciation. I have a chat with them. I'm more of a therapist than I am a cosmetic doctor, to be honest. I spend a long time talking, and normally my consultations may last about an hour or so. We just talk for an hour, and I touch we do an examination of the face, but 3/4 of that time is just talking. And I think that's so important. I need to know, who they are, what they do, what their background is. Have they had something done before? What their problem areas are? How many kids they've got. It makes an impact. Are they married? Are they single? Are they working? Are they working from home? Are they working in an office? What their goals are, what their expectations are, what their fears are, what their concerns are. all of those things need to be met. Even if you've had stuff done before, you'd be surprised that people have gone to other people before, and actually once we start talking about it, they're like, oh God, I didn't realize that was, we also talk about the risks of all the procedures, we have to talk about everything. So yes, I can give you options, but then I need to sit there, and sometimes they kind of, you know, they roll their eyes a bit, oh, we need to go through the risks. And I'm like, yeah, you have to go through the risks. You have to know what you're getting yourself in for. This is a medical procedure. It's not something you can just go and get done, in my opinion, at your hairdressers, but some hairdressers do inject, unfortunately. But we spend a long time talking about it, and you'd be surprised the amount of times that I've told someone something about one of the risks of the procedure that they've already had done with another person previously, and they look at me and they go, oh no, but that can't happen, can it? Because I've already had it and it didn't happen last time. And you have to make them understand that every time they have a procedure, even if they didn't know about risk, the risk is still there. And you know, there's always I can blind you. So if I did a procedure with dermal fillers, I can blind my patient. Even if I'm doing a chin augmentation, every time the needle goes through the skin, it's game on. There's always a risk that I could cause damage and cause harm to my patient. So I think as rule one, as a doctor, when we graduated from medical school, I stood up and I did the Hippocratic Oath. The first thing we say is do no harm. And I think that's the most important thing, is to make sure we limit the amount of risk that we expose our patients to. And these are risky procedures. There are things that can go wrong, you know, blindness, stroke, you know, these are things that can happen. They're very, very rare. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to scare everyone off, or I wouldn't have a business, but it's important to appreciate that those things can happen. And it's also important to appreciate that there are more common complications that can happen that sometimes aren't always blasted out on the airwaves, and not many people know about them. But you also need to know that people who have those complications, if they've gone to someone who's worth the money, and is medically trained, nurse, doctor, or dentist only, and has got experience and has done an adequate number of procedures, even if a complication occurs, and it has happened to me before, I need to know how to deal with it, and I need to be able to make sure that I can keep them safe in those scenarios. I've had loads of complications. If someone said to you they don't have complications, I think you need to walk right out the door, because I think that's absolutely appalling. There's only three things that can be wrong with those people. Either they're lying, so they're lying, that's one possibility. The second thing is that they haven't done enough procedures to actually have complications, so they haven't done enough procedures. Or the third, the worst one, is actually they've had the complication, it's come back and the patient's told them, but they haven't been able to recognize it. That's even worse. So you know, those are the three bad things. So we need to take all of that into account and make sure that we really give our patient a full perspective on what we need to do. And I think the word that kind of sums up everything that I'm talking about is being holistic. So we kind of have to take everything into account. That doesn't just mean their facial features and their proportions. That's all really important, because as I said, I can't, not to repeat myself, but I can't give you something if I don't think it's going to look good on you. I think I would be doing you a disservice, and it would be injustice, and that would be awful. A lot of the stuff is reversible, and that's one of the caveats we can say to our patients is actually, you know, God forbid, if you didn't like what I did, I can reverse it in most instances. Some stuff is not reversible, but most stuff is, with dermal fillers anyway. So we've got to be holistic, and we've got to take all those factors into account when we come to a decision. And I think it's coming to a decision together, which is the most important thing. It's making sure the patient understands that it's a joint decision, it's a relationship. And I always say that to my patients, and I get some cocky patients occasionally who come in with like, this is what I want and I know what I need. And we always break it down and we make it really clear that I'm not a vending machine. You know, you don't just press a button and get a treatment. It's about making sure it's the right thing for you, making sure you understand the risks, the benefits, and making sure the benefits outweigh the risks, and making sure we do. So in someone who's 50-year-old, you know, we may want to say we would do slowly progress towards a full face rejuvenation. That's the ultimate aim, where we can get the best result, make you look as natural as possible, and make it look like nothing's ever happened. Make it look like you haven't had anything done. And that's the aim, is that if you can see that I've done something, I've cocked it up.
Yeah.
So anybody with like kind of big, juicy, horrific lips, or like a sharp jawline that looks like a protractor, or a set square, I think it's awful, because it's just so obvious that you look weird. People get scared by that. So I think you need to look normal. People want to look normal. They don't look plastic in the most instance.
So do you think there needs to be more education around before people actually go and get work done? I mean, I've got friends who will literally, I'll sit there having a like glass of wine with them, chatting along, and they'll go, I'm going to go get lip filler. Yeah, I think I'm going to do that in the next couple of weeks. But in theory, they don't actually know anything about it. Do you think there needs to be more information around that and how it works, the effects?
I think we are now moving into the age of information, but probably also we're also moving into the age of misinformation. There is a lot of stuff out there, and some of the stuff is right and some of the stuff is wrong. And the problem is that in the UK there's no regulation. So we are in a really weird place. In most countries in the world, you can't get fillers unless it's from a plastic surgeon or a dermatologist. But in the UK, we are in this weird position where literally anybody can pick up a syringe, and as long as they've got your permission, it's completely a fair game. And we always joke that in the UK you need more regulation to sell ice cream in an ice cream van than for me to stick a 10-inch needle in your face. Like that's how it is, unfortunately. So the problem is there's not going to be a unified view, because there's not a unified group of people who are doing the procedures. There are people who are incredibly highly advanced, highly skilled, who spent years and years training for it and studying and know everything inside out. And then you've got complete morons who literally have not got a clue operating, and we're on equal standing. Mm-hmm. From the patient's point of view. And lots of people use words like medically qualified and all these things. I literally got a call a few months ago from someone who wants to come work for me. She said she was medically qualified. And when I delved into it more, it turned out that she was a beautician. She was a nail artist, and she'd done an afternoon of first aid. And then she said, well, I'm medically qualified. And I was like, I spent 6 years at medical school, and I still don't think I'm medically qualified. So, and these people are literally completely delusional. They think and there's something called the Dunning-Kruger effect, which basically means that, people will become more confident about things and become so cocky about it that they don't actually realize that they don't know what they don't know, and they think they are experts in their field. And there's that kind of level of consciousness is scary. So I think I'm a position where I know, we all go through this learning curve, and we kind of end up learning things and becoming better. It's like learning to drive. You consciously try to do something and it's really rubbish at the beginning, and then eventually you unconsciously can gear change without thinking about it. And I think becoming unconsciously aware that you're competent at something, it takes a long time, but you have to be always aware that there is so many unknowns that I will never know. And I think that's the position where a true expert is actually appreciating that we don't know everything. I think we have actually moved towards giving more information. And I think in the age of social media, we are definitely, there's loads of stuff on Instagram, pumping out on Facebook, Instagram, and all those things about information about treatments and stuff. But to be honest, it doesn't really matter. If somebody wants a treatment for whatever reason, that's completely fine. But the most important thing is that we have a chat about it and we have a consultation. And it's my job to make sure that you are brought up to par with the information that you need to know before we do the procedure.
In terms of like Botox, a lot of people you see after, I don't know, they've had it a few times, they almost get that like catty look. Do you know what I mean? Why is that? Like, what's the reason?
Just because it's been done really badly by someone who doesn't know what they're doing. So I've got patients that are news presenters, and they come to me and they're like, no one can know I've had anything done, and I go, that's fine. That's exactly what we're going to aim for. And it's being able to, and again, it's that cookie cutter approach. Is some things will look good on some people, and some things won't look good on others. And it's making sure you understand. And it's basically been done by someone who hasn't taken into full consideration that person's anatomy and the way their face looks they've overdone the Botox or they've underdone it in certain areas. So I know if I treat the central area really heavily and leave the outside untouched because I want to save on some Botox, I can actually end up making someone look like they've had like a weird spot brow where it shoots off at the edge. And actually it's knowledge that we have to treat the muscle as it goes all the way around. And it's knowledge that the muscle doesn't always look the same in everybody. There's actually 4 different variations of the forehead muscle. So, there isn't a set diagram where everyone follows. Everyone's faces are different. Everyone says like, oh, we're all same on the inside. That's completely bollocks. We're not. We're completely different. Everyone's completely different. And it's having the knowledge that they are different and how you're going to treat that person differently. That will be the difference between someone who can make you look natural and someone who makes you look done.
Okay.
And the point is that you shouldn't be able to tell I've done anything.
That's really interesting, actually, because like I say, like you see it so many times, like where all of a sudden they look like a cat, and
yeah, I know. And they'll come into my clinic sometimes and they'll say, I want this done because that's what my previous person did. And I look at them and I go, actually, I don't think that's a good idea for you. I think you need to have less Botox because I think that's too much. And they go, well, that's how I've had it done for like 15 years. And I was like, well, it's been done badly for 15 years. I was like, just listen to me. Sometimes I can persuade them. And if we persuade them, actually, sometimes they come back and they go, I'm absolutely shocked. I wasted so much extra money and I paid less and actually got a far better result I was happy with. And it solved my problem and I didn't look weird. So it's sometimes less is more. But it's making patients understand that it can take some troubleshooting occasionally.
What would you say your 3 main life tips are?
So I think 3 top tips from my life that I would, and these are kind of things that I've learned as time has gone on, normally by mistakes that I've made. I think that's normally, and that's one of the actual points is actually you will learn so much from your mistakes. And you'll learn so much from the bad things that happen in your life. And actually, you don't ever take any of those things in the negative context. Always look for the silver lining. There will always be a learning point. And I think don't be afraid to make that leap. It might be that there's a leap of faith that you have to make in order to believe that that's the right thing, or a new path has come out for you that you didn't have before. It can take a lot of guts to make the jump into something and kind of almost embrace your mistakes and embrace change and learn something from it. And I think that's something that I would advocate. I think people easily get stuck in a rut. I was stuck in a rut. I was before this I was training in the NHS on a surgical training pathway. So I was doing surgery in the hospitals and helping that. And I did my core surgical training. And then actually I stepped out and I was like, actually, there's something that I want to do, which I'm going to go out on a limb and do it. And it's worked out really well for me. It doesn't always work out, but that's fine. That's, again, part of the learning process. So I think learning from your mistakes or allowing mistakes to happen and thinking about them more as happy accidents and learning something from it and really giving it, when you do have a learning point, really learn from it and jump on those opportunities when they come. I think the second thing is that, especially in my world, I just don't think there's time or place nowadays for mediocrity. I think you have to be on top of your game. So whatever you do, be the best at whatever you do. So spend the hours, do the research, do the focused analysis on what makes people who do what you do good, and then basically mirror them. Yeah. So spend time looking at people who are good at what you want to do and mirror it. And whatever the situation is, whatever the industry is, whatever the skill is, or whatever it is that you're aiming for, you will find people who are good at that thing or something very, very close to it. Look at what they do, look at the way they work and what they've done, and mirror that. And I think that's something that I've really, really tried, and don't be mediocre, try to be the best at whatever you do. And part of that is the third tip is normally surround yourself with people who are more successful than you are. Yeah. And I think that's really, really powerful and important. And I think that happened to me quite early on in my career, because I think I people naturally, listen to their friends and listen to their colleagues, and that's fine, that's okay, because your colleagues will be in a similar position to you, similar level. You might listen to your boss, you might listen to your manager, you might listen to your friends, they might be doing something completely different to you. But actually, surround yourself with people who are doing what you do, but are doing it better than you. And actually, it puts you in a position where it pushes you forward and makes you a better person. It makes you also, and this is really important, it's actually, they can give you so many learning points and mistakes that they've made, that they've learned from. So when I say learn from mistakes, it doesn't always mean your own mistakes. It can mean other people's mistakes. But if you do enough research, you'll get that information, and it'll save you time and money and embarrassment. So I think it's important. Surround yourself with people who've done what you've done 1,000 times over. They're better than you at it, and make you feel, give you that encouragement to pick you up. You don't want to be surrounded people who are egotistical and up their own arse and narcissists. You need to be, and I did a lot of networking and a kind of mastermind groups at the beginning, where people who are far more experienced with me sat next to me, and you do feel a bit out of place at the beginning, but actually you suddenly realize that there's a lot you can gain from that. So any opportunity where you can get experience with someone who is very good at something, you need to take time and make sure you give that person the time and ask them any questions you want to ask them and come prepared.
That's brilliant. Thank you very much.
Is that okay?
Now, I hope you all learned something from that video with Dr. Raj. I know what stood out for me was when Dr. Raj was saying about people can ask him for Kylie Jenner's lips, but on someone else it will never look the same. Now, to me, what I took from that is that not everyone's the same. Everyone is beautiful in their own way. And even though we have these different types of cosmetics, we're never going to be the same, and that is so important to remember. Now, you can follow Dr. Raj here. If you have someone that inspires you, comment below. I'm always so interested to find out who others find inspirational. Likewise, if you have an inspirational story to tell, comment below, drop me a message on social media, or even drop me an email. On Sunday at 4 o'clock, I'll be speaking with the creative director from Tatler magazine, Tom Usher. Now, if you liked this video, give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to hit subscribe, and I'll speak to you all on Sunday. See you later.